You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word.
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on SouthamptonDelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope you enjoy it. And let's be honest, if you are a Saints fan and you're not enjoying your morning, assuming you're listening to this on Tuesday morning or sometime on Tuesday, you're not enjoying your day, then something really bad must have happened between the 96th minute last night and now. And I hope whatever that is goes away so you can enjoy the football that Saints are currently playing. You can enjoy the results. You can enjoy the performances. You can enjoy just being a giant thorn in the sides of the teams that would expect to take 3 points from Saints fairly often. There's really not a lot to complain about. I mean, guys are tired. Yes, guys are running themselves kind of into the ground, but we're scoring goals. We are pressing. We are exciting to watch. Michael Obafemi, 2 touches, 1 goal. You can Google that safely. And unlike, that thing that was out when I was in college. But anyway, things are good. And I hope that you enjoyed it. And not that there weren't problems, not that we didn't have players who made mistakes, not that we didn't have players who had a bad game. That's all part of it. But I just think that we're seeing something, and hopefully I'm not getting too far ahead here, but it looks like things are starting to come together. Like the guys are starting to understand the system and the process, and everybody's there. And really, I'm enjoying it, and I hope you are too. And thanks for being here to hopefully enjoy more of the talk about those things. And to help me do that this week is Alex Hart. You can find him on Twitter at Hart Garfunkel. You may have heard his voice before on Total Saints podcast. He was on episode 70 and episode 106. And those links are in the show notes so you can get to know Alex a little bit better. We didn't want to go over all of the same old things that we've already discussed there. So we focus a little bit on talking about football and the differences between football or soccer here at the collegiate level versus kind of what you see in the Premier League and things like that. And then we go on to talk about the Everton performance and the draw there before we go on to talk mostly about the draw at Old Trafford and just kind of what we saw. I think the enthusiasm and the excitement is there because we recorded just shortly after the final whistle. And I hope that you can listen along and smile and maybe come up with some ideas of your own and let us know kind of what you think, because we always do appreciate that. If you're enjoying the show, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. It really does help other people who listen to podcasts and then who may be looking for something about Southampton find the show. It does really help that. And really, I just appreciate it. And if you also are enjoying the show, you can sign up for the newsletter that comes out each and every Friday. That'll be in your inbox on Friday if you sign up at southamptondelivery.com/newsletter. But that is enough of all of this. You can go find Alex on Twitter, like I said, at Hart Garfunkel. And one more thing, need to give a shout out to Carl Anker, because the way Alex and I actually came together and found each other on Twitter was through the article that Carl wrote in The Athletic about American Saints fans. And it turns out that Alex and I, we live about 3.5 hours from each other, which is basically means in terms of American travel, we're best friends now. So we'll talk about Southampton and their draw at United and their draw at Everton. We'll talk about Michael Obafemi. We'll talk about cushion headers from defenders, which is something that I really, really enjoy. And I hope that you enjoy the conversation, and we'll talk to you on the other side. I'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Alex Hart. You can find him on Twitter at Hart Garfunkel. The link is in the show notes. No stranger to appearances on Saints podcasts, but Alex, thank you for joining me just, I'd say an hour or so after the final whistle from the West Coast of the United States. So we're going to make this all happen while everybody in the UK is sleeping, and it'll be out in the morning. But welcome to the show, and thanks for taking some time to join me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. It's a pleasure to be on, and definitely still buzzing after the match. It was a fun one.
Yeah. Once again, like when Lucy came on, just recently, it was one of those things where, man, you agreed to do the City match and you agreed to do this match, and it's like, oh, I never know how it's going to work out, but I'm pleasantly surprised. And I would say that at the beginning of the season, I'd be pleasantly surprised. Right now, I kind of feel like that was coming. Like we are a good team right now, and we showed it today in for large parts of the game, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I would actually still say pleasantly surprised. I thought we would play well and make a good sort of account of ourselves, but we'd still probably lose in the end because Man U has been so hot recently. But yeah, kind of once Brandon Williams went out and they were down to 10 men, and we kind of started to look a little bit sharper. I was like, okay, this might happen, and then it did. So kind of get to enjoy perhaps being on the other side of that for the first time in what feels like a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they Southampton looked tired for portions of the match and we'll come to it because it's going to be part of the questions that come up. But they seem to have something in the end where they just kept going, and whether it's that substitution or the injury that gives them the man advantage that really makes it happen or not, we won't know that, but they kept going, and I think that's something that we can be happy with as well. So I'm feeling really good right now, and I'm hoping that this carries. If the season ended today, I'd be thrilled, and but I also think that we can carry it forward a little bit. We'll see how Brighton goes. I imagine there'll be some rotation, I think, but we'll see. Before we do that, you've been on other podcasts, on Total Saints podcast a couple of times, and the links to those two are in the show notes because they get to know you a little bit better, and we don't want to rehash all of those things because people can go listen to it there. So links to those episodes are in the show notes. And I also kind of got to know you a little bit through the article that Carl did in The Athletic about the U.S. Saints fans. So I do want to touch on a couple of things. I know you live in L.A. Right now, but you grew up in the Bay Area, and just because my kind of connection and upbringing with the game of football, or soccer as we call it here, was different than I think than yours was, because you played at a fairly high level. But can you just kind of how did you get acquainted or introduced to football living in the Bay Area when you were younger?
Yeah, so I grew up playing, as I think a lot of American kids do. My dad's family is English, so he actually played in college. So kind of played as a kid and was one of those kids who was very competitive and athletic little boy. So I quickly took to it, but I played other sports as well, but I kind of just worked my way up, the club soccer ranks kind of in the US.
Okay.
It just was it just kind of worked out that way. I just remembered my parents at one point took me to a tryout team, and I made the team and kind of just was playing at that level from that point forward. I don't really remember how I started watching, to be honest, because I don't know if you really remember, but it was was it Fox Soccer Channel in the early 2000s? So I kind of started watching some of that. And when the World Cups were on, I would start watching, but it really felt like the Premier League sort of coverage took off when NBC started with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I decided, all right, I never had a team growing up. I had dalliances with other teams, which I won't name, but I didn't really have any real loyalty. And then after college was about when the NBC deal happened. I'd been pretty burned out of soccer. I played soccer in college, kind of reached that point of, okay, I'm tired of this. I'm over this. But when I got back into it, decided I wanted to have a team that I would support. That's when NBC's coverage was taking off and really took it to the next level here in the States. And, decided I wanted a team and picked Saints that first year they got promoted. So it all kind of worked out in that way. But yeah, it's something I kind of grew up with and, could say perfectly timed with the rise of the EPL coverage in the US, and it just worked out.
Yeah. For people who don't know, if there's anything less professional than this show, the Fox Soccer Channel was it. It was bad. The coverage was awful. And I only remember it kind of in passing because we didn't watch it really in my house. But the coverage was just so bad. It would just put you off for the most part. And I think that's part of the reason that the game, at least when it's competing in a household with traditional American sports, it wasn't enough to stick past the World Cups. And you would see this big spike in people kind of watching a little bit, but then those people all tended to gravitate towards the bigger teams, and then it would fall off until the next World Cup cycle. People enjoy Fulham because of the connection. People enjoy Everton because there's American players there, but really outside of that, it wasn't really sticking, at least, where I live. And then, where I live in Southern California, we have a lot of people who come up from Mexico and to make their life here, and they all support teams back in Mexico. So you see a lot of those jerseys going around, a lot of those kits going around. And I always get the Southampton kid always gets mistaken for Chivas. Yeah. And I get a lot of whistles and stuff, and I'm like, hey, it clearly says Virgin on my chest. Like, I'm not a Chivas fan. And they point and laugh at that. So it's all good. High school kids are great. Can I ask what position you played when you were in college?
Yeah, in college I played mostly as a center back and outside back. I kind of over the years got moved further and further back. I started out as a striker and then played kind of on the wings and then moved to outside back. And by the time college rolled around, I kind of was a little beaten up by that point. I had some sort of niggling injuries that lasted the whole time I was in college, and kind of all I could really play at that point was center back because I wasn't the most mobile anymore.
Well, you could read the game really well, so you saw it from everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. When you can't move very well, you got to read the game well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I played 3 years at Tufts back east.
Oh, okay, so you weren't in Southern California for that, so.
No.
And U.S. college soccer, much different than I think some people realize, because it's I think at that point still rolling substitutions, right? And just it's a really physical, like fast paced kind of end to end game. I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong because I didn't play it.
No, I think my big takeaway was I grew up in as mentioned in Northern California, where you get a lot of sort of the Latino influence on the game, and I played with kids who played on the El Salvadorian national team, who went pro in Mexico, things like that, and you kind of play that a little bit more skilled technical game. And then going from that in warm Northern California to I played D3 college soccer is very physical, very about athleticism. Definitely got my butt kicked a little bit doing that. So that was also just sort of a big change, that you go from sort of playing in this way where it's really focused around keeping the ball and playing a very technical game to going to playing with, a large group of athletes.
Yeah.
Big difference in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Tufts. I think I work with a guy who went there, but we won't talk about that right now. It's not a different podcast.
Well, I will quick plug. When I was there, we were horrible, but in the last 5 or 6 years, they've won 4 D3 national championships. So we were the trough that allowed them to succeed, basically, after that.
Nice. And it's not like they didn't get draft picks after that, but they just figured it out, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. They fired the coach and brought in a new coach.
Perfect. I do work with a guy who went there. I just looked on his LinkedIn account. But anyway, so, I mean, you started supporting Saints around the same time I did, and I imagine our kind of high and low points will be similar. But, I mean, is there a player that drew you to the team, or somebody that stood out since you first started watching?
Yeah, I mean, I think the player that I liked most when I got into them was Morgan Schneiderlin. I love and appreciate sort of like a center midfielder who can do kind of the dirty work and is also pretty cultured on the ball. And he was, I think, kind of the epitome of that when he was at his peak. So I thought he was just so cool and just so great when we had him. And then, I mean, obviously, this is not going to surprise anybody, but, from the day we signed him, or actually from the first time I saw him play, like Virgil van Dijk was just at another level.
Sure.
And so getting to watch a player who we kind of brought in a pretty unheralded way, recognized pretty early he was pretty great. And then now for him to go on to be the best defender in the world. And I just don't think there's anyone at his level right now is pretty amazing. So that was, it's hard not to look. I mean, obviously Liverpool, I have a lot of feelings about sort of how they've gone about their business and taking a lot of our players, but seeing him sort of succeed at the level he's succeeded at, I think is a vindication in certain ways, because he really is just an outstanding soccer player, football player.
Yeah. No, there's no denying that. And I struggle with that too sometimes, because it's like, am I allowed to say they're good because they're good? And am I allowed to say I enjoy watching them play? But really, at the end of the day, like it's called a beautiful game. If they're playing at that level, you should try to just enjoy it and then hate them secretly on the inside. And then whenever anybody asks you about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, Saints have been playing, I want to say amazing football, but they've been playing really, really well over the past couple of weeks. And this is really, since the restart, kind of the first time that I think we're starting to see something that we can truly be excited about as fans, just in terms of what's happening on the pitch, because, we kind of both started watching under Pochettino, and then had Koeman, and then we kind of went through this kind of trough of, pretty bad football, pretty unexciting stuff, and signings not working out, and we're still kind of suffering the I guess the repercussions of that. But I mean, now, would you say that what we're seeing is starting to reach that level of excitement that you felt when we were playing under Pochettino and Koeman?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think most fans would probably say the same thing, that it's a point where we're at a point where it feels a little bit like it's fun to watch again. And I think, especially, I don't know for you, but especially for me, for these last few matches, knowing that we've kind of wrapped up safety and yeah, going into the restart, we were pretty close, but, sort of what we've done since then has really just cemented it and gone above and beyond. It's an opportunity to watch, and it does feel a little bit like playing with house money, and you kind of, there's really not much to lose. And so you go in and watching these games, and, I think I mentioned earlier too when we were chatting that, if they'd lost 2-1, okay, they gave a good account of themselves, and, De Gea makes a great save on Redmond. Okay, maybe that was the chance, and we did all right, and you can live with it. And, but then they just, there's something to them now where it's not over till it's over. And I think up until, the last little bit, that hasn't been the case for us. Right. We've been the team that concedes that late goal. We've been the team where, it seems like everything goes against us at the last moment. So it's fun to kind of be able to have that, and to, I think, having a little bit of experience with the down, like you said, neither of us are as familiar with how it can go, but having had a little bit more experience with the down, you appreciate when it's good a little bit more. And, going into these last 3 matches of the season, it's kind of, I'm excited just to see who plays, what we do. It just feels very positive and open-ended, and it's been a long time since that's been the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's go back, because we had a Patreon only episode that some people would have heard, but it was mostly a build up to this game, and we talked a little bit about the draw at Everton, and I think, I was going into Everton kind of really, once again, like thinking there's a chance for us to get something here, but also recognizing that they had some parts of their team that could probably hurt us a little bit, and I think a lot of times that was Richarlison, simply because strikers like that tend to give us problems. And I would say that the one thing I was holding on to was that we seemed to deal with Deeney pretty well in the Watford game, and he wasn't able to bully our center backs, which I thought was great. But I think just having two center forwards to deal with, not two center backs, but two center forwards to deal with, and then there's the pace and the skill of Richarlison, that combination, along with the things he does off the ball, I think really did cause us some issues. And when they were direct, we proved we were still vulnerable, and I think that showed up against Man United as well today.
Yeah. I think those quick counters, I think, are showing up as something that are tricky for us to deal with. The second goal, I think, was another good product of that. Sort of, you get past the first couple lines of the press, and then you can run at us a little bit. I mean, I got to say, I thought, the goal actually that Everton scored, that Richarlison goal, was a great goal. Mm-hmm. They kind of good movement from both the strikers. If I'm, as a former center back, as Bednarik, you see Calvert-Lewin make the run kind of in behind Stevens. Stevens doesn't see it, so you have to go with him, and Bertrand's not really there on the back post, so Richarlison's open. And I kind of just tipped my hat and said, all right, that was a good goal. Sometimes you give up good goals, but yeah, Richarlison, he always scores against us.
Yeah, he's one of those players I don't want to see him on the team sheet against Saints. And and I think sometimes it's important to recognize that not every time another team scores, like, we have a mistake that we have to hang somebody out to dry on. Sometimes other teams are just good, and that's okay. And that was I think it was super direct. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 passes, and that was it. And it like you said, it just was a great goal. And I would say, like, I guess Richarlison, the one big difference between him and Deeney is just the pace, right? Like, is that it? And the fact that he had a partner to work off of as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's also just a little bit more crafty and a little bit more skilled. Deeney, I mean, I there's certain things about him that I love. I mean, but he feels just the epitome of a direct striker. Mm-hmm. Richarlison, I think, has a little bit more just sort of skill and creativity to him, which is why I think also you saw us, foul him pretty heavily and try to leave a mark on him a little bit to sort of try to blunt that a little bit. And also just going back to that Watford game, Watford they were pretty poor. I think we just kind of dominated them in that game, and it left Deeney pretty by himself, and he's not going to be the type who's going to create all by himself. I don't think he's athletic enough to do that in the way that, like, the person that honestly comes to mind is Mikel Antonio, who you leave him alone against our center backs, and he's just so athletic that he destroys us. Deeney kind of needs a little bit more service than he might. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a case of him being very up on his own, whereas Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, I think, are building a pretty good rapport with one another. And yeah, it was a good goal. And they kind of hit us more on the counter, whereas I think Watford's not really set up to hit teams, at least the way they were setting up against us. I don't think they were playing Pereira, and there's no De La Feu, so he just looked kind of by himself up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, to come out of that game with a point, I think what I wrote in the newsletter was that, we played 2 very different games against Manchester City and against Everton, and wind up with winning one that we wouldn't have thought we could win, and then maybe one that we haven't won at Goodison in forever, it seems like. I think you have to go back to like 1993 for like a league win there or something like that. But
yeah, definitely it precedes us.
Yeah. And then definitely. And then we get a draw at Everton, and I think definitely happy with it, I guess, at the end. But we had a lot more possession. We had a lot more chances, and XG and all that stuff. We were the better team in terms of that, but they still had chances against us. Whereas Manchester City, we pressed for a while, and then as the game went on, we kind of just dug in and started defending kind of deeper and throwing our bodies on the line. And I thought I was proud of both performances. But all that to say that coming into today against United, a team that is playing very well, I wouldn't say I was confident that we were going to get something, but I thought it was going to be a real chance for us to see just how far this has come and give us a chance to kind of show that the process is working and that the players are getting the hang of it, even though I think we definitely saw some tired legs as the match went on.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something worth sort of talking a little bit more about, but couldn't agree more that, I kind of thought I didn't think we would get a result, but I thought we'd make a good showing of ourselves. And I think for a lot of the match, it kind of looked like that might be the case. Those 2 goals they scored in quick succession just shows kind of what they can do. And I think that might be the case for them for the next year or two, that they're just going to be able to turn it on when they want to. They're a good side. There's just no denying it. And, when you have Martial, Rashford, Greenwood, and Fernandez, and I feel like I'm still forgetting somebody, they're going to score a lot of goals.
Yeah.
And they just have that ability to go forward. So, if it had ended 2-1, I think I was thinking like, okay, we gave it a good shot. I think, like you said, we looked pretty tired, but there's definitely, something there that the players have a lot of belief. I think that's a part of it. I think Ralph has instilled that in them. And then, even at the end of the Everton game, we looked like the team that was more likely to score.
Uh-huh.
And this is the fact that we are using nowhere near the amount of subs that we have available to us. So, and I think you can see that the players are looking a little tired. So there's just something else that they're kind of digging into and tapping into that's allowing them to go that little extra bit that means they don't give up a goal, against City, and means that they get a goal in the 107th or whatever it was minute against Man U.
Yeah. And coming into today, United obviously really rolling, 4 wins coming into it, 1 draw that preceded those. But we're not, in terms of the form table, we're close. We've picked up 11 points since the restart. They've picked up 14 going into today, or no, that includes today. And just we are playing great football as well. But when you took a look at the lineup, was there a concern that, given how hard the team had been running, and there were I think signs of tiredness? I think back to Armstrong even in the City match, where he just seemed to be out on his feet and couldn't get the ball clear right at the end, and it was like, oh no, this is it, and
I've seen this movie before.
yeah. It doesn't end well.
Sterling in the 90-something minute, upper corner with Fraser Forster in net.
Yeah. Were you at all concerned, given the fact that it was another kind of unchanged lineup for Ralph?
It's funny. I actually wasn't going into it. I thought, okay, makes sense. We've gotten good results in the last couple of games, and it wasn't, it's not like we played just 2 days ago. We played Thursday, so they had Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. But I think around the 25th minute, when I kind of started to, after Man U got those couple of goals, he just looked a little sloppy. And I think and that tiredness can often come through as sloppiness, not connecting on a pass you normally connect on, things like that. So it was kind of at that point that I was a little concerned, particularly because it stayed that way. I wasn't exactly sure who we were going to go to on the bench. Obviously he's bringing in Long and Smallbone into almost every match. He obviously brought in Obafemi for the winner, but beyond that, I didn't really know who was going to come in. And I would one of the things I would like to see for the last few matches is I would like to see Will Ferry and Jake Vokins and Alex Jankowicz in action. I don't know anything about them beyond that they're supposed to be decent and maybe one for the future, but I'd like to see them. But, in a game where you're kind of up against it as I thought we might be in this one, I didn't really know who we were going to turn to. But again, they kind of just dug in and once it was 2-1 by the drinks break, which I think we looked really tired going into that. Mm-hmm. That's when he took Armstrong off. Once it was 2-1 going into there, okay, either Man U scores one more, it's over, or, you got 20 minutes where you're only a goal off and who knows what happens. So I think getting to that point was kind of the catalyst for maybe going that extra last bit.
Yeah. A couple of talking points before we get too far into the match. The start of the game, once again, Saints were executing the game plan, and I was super happy to see that they were up and pressing and forcing United into mistakes. And we saw Pogba get taken off the ball for our goal, but also we saw that we're just being able to force the chances. And I think at some point before Armstrong scored, the only real chances that were created were the chance that Martial had because James Ward-Prowse just decided to go Gerrard-esque and just leave the ball there. And then McCarthy kind of comes up and makes that save, which I thought that could have been it. That could have set the tone for the entire game if he puts that in. But McCarthy comes up with a big save, and I was pretty happy because I think the only chances that had been done, we had managed to create a chance that didn't go anywhere, but they had created a chance just from our mistake, and we had actually worked the ball quite nicely a couple of times to big diagonals across to Kyle Walker-Peters, and then again Kyle Walker-Peters playing a diagonal across to Ings that Bertrand was eventually able to get across in as a result. But I was really happy with the football we were playing. We looked like we were not afraid to play against them, and I think that's what I miss. I feel like those Koeman teams were not ever scared to play, even if they were going to counterattack. They weren't ever looking timid on the ball or against opposition, and they look like you're going to have to come and beat us, and we're going to be physical and cause you problems as well. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really enjoying right now about the team.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Couldn't have sort of said it better that, when the game starts, it's not sort of, okay, we're going to go back into our shell and it's going to be 90 minutes of us trying to hold on for dear life, and maybe we get one or two half decent counterattacking looks. I mean, in the first 15 minutes, the press worked. It worked well. And that's against a team that has players who can play at the level, man, you have. So, I think watching that and seeing, okay, we're pressing the ball really effectively. We're winning the ball in some exciting places. Yeah, maybe not anything's necessarily coming out of it, but we're at least disrupting them a little bit. It's fun to watch that. Yeah. And it's, again, even if nothing comes of it, you can see what they're trying to do, which I think, at times over the last couple of years has been direly lacking. Like, what are we trying to do? What is the game plan?
Yeah. And there were times in the past couple of seasons where there was nothing recognizable about the team. And the possession, we could have all the possession in the world and we wouldn't create a single chance. And that was super frustrating for a lot of people, myself included. But I thought today, you look at that United lineup and you kind of went through it earlier, but that pace that the front three and have, and then you add in the creativity that Fernandes has brought to them, and the kind of freeing up of Paul Pogba to kind of get box to box while you have and obviously aging, but a reliable holding midfielder there. They look more complete than I think I've seen United be since I've been watching, really. And they are scary, but I thought we like we said, we stood toe to toe with them. We Ings did what Ings does. He pressured people. He was the guy who created that goal for Armstrong and to even create the chance at all. And I think that says something about what we were able to do. And the fact that Fernandes was so quiet today and Greenwood was quiet, and like that means a lot. On the other side, Kyle Walker-Peters maybe had coming back down to earth a little bit after playing out of his skin a couple of games, but we'll kind of get to that. So, we go up. Let's talk about that goal a little bit. Were you surprised that it's Danny Ings tracking back to pick the ball off of Pogba there, or no?
Not really. At this point, can you be surprised by anything he does? He is a one-man wrecking ball. And I have to say, when, we were going for the second goal, I thought for the life of me, he was going to be the one to score. Yeah. And I don't think I've ever felt that with anybody we've had. Even sort of, I came in on the latter years of Lambert and the Pella days. It wasn't always him who scored the goals when it counted. But right now, you bet on him. I'd bet the house on him that he would be involved in some type of way. And I think, he disrupts the game. The ball falls kindly to Redmond, who puts it in for Armstrong. Good finish. That just feels like one of the ways we work right now. And no, I wasn't surprised at all to see him involved. And then not long after that, you had Adams take the ball off Pogba at around the halfway line. And, lacking a little bit in the final third, but it kind of happened again, and you're like, they're clearly doing something that's disrupting the flow and working.
Yeah. And Adams there, if the ball is a little more crisp to Ings, then perhaps we find ourselves 2-0 up, but it didn't quite work out. And I think you can see Adams getting better each game, but you can still see the big difference between him and Ings. And I think if he was playing along another striker who wasn't quite as good, who wasn't doing all of the other things, that Adams would look a little bit better. But the quality of Ings is definitely kind of shining through, and Adams is getting there. And I'm glad that he's getting a run in the side right now, because I think it's going to benefit the club in the long run as he gets better and better, especially now that we're safe and he has time to work in the system, and Ings is going to tell him where to be. And that's what we need, I think, from him.
Agreed. I think my big concern with him is on the ball, he's a little, I don't know another way of putting it, but like a little clunky, a heavy touch, a pass that doesn't look like the hardest pass, but, maybe a little too far ahead of someone. He's just not the most smooth on the ball. And I think maybe that comes back with getting more time, more minutes. I think he looked a little fatigued today. I think Obafemi, when he's on, is a little bit better on the ball than he is. But, there's obviously been so many consistency issues that have come up with him that I feel like we keep hearing about. But yeah, I think Adams looks like he could be the next Shane Long. And I know that's not necessarily a glamorous or necessarily exciting role, but in Ralph's system, I think it's one we need. A hardworking striker who puts people under pressure and can hold the ball up effectively and do a job. And, hopefully he can continue to grow on the ball, and we'll see. But, he's at least proven enough to me that I think we should give him some more time.
Yeah. Well, and at one point under Koeman, Long scored 10 goals in a Premier League season. So, the goals may well be there. People forget that, we spread the goals around quite a bit under Koeman, which was really, really nice.
I remember that one year he just couldn't miss. It was great. It was wild. And then you obviously, for the last couple of years have had kind of the opposite. Yeah. But again, you always know you're going to get something from him. And I think Adams feels like he has a little bit of that. You're always going to get 60 hard minutes from him. I feel like that you're starting to see that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the first United goal, because, we had played really well up until then. And I almost think our goal kind of woke them up a little bit, and they started to play much better. And, we had a warning shot that was fired because Rashford, I think, was offside. But you could see how fast they can accelerate. And the Aaron Wan-Bissaka, not known for being an offensive force, but manages to kind of take 3 defenders and just force the ball through. I heard the announcer here say, great footwork from him. I didn't really see that. I saw more of like a clunky touch, and we're just gonna make sure it's gonna go somewhere, and they wind up with the ball, and eventually the cross goes in, and Martial does well, I think, to hold off. I'm not sure if it's Bednarik or Stevens, but we just can't get it clear. Yeah. And then I was a little concerned because Kyle Walker-Peters wasn't there. Maybe he got sucked towards the ball a little bit because it was kind of there to be cleared or won, and he just didn't get there. And Rashford buries it, and just like that, it's 1-1. Isn't that just one of those? That seemed like one of those goals that we would concede, because it seemed simple enough just to get the ball clear, but maybe in reality there's a little more to it.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It was one of those where on another day, maybe that ball in from Pog was a good ball, but maybe on another day it hits Oriel in the head. Oriel's in the right position. It's a whipped in ball, and maybe on another day Bednarik is able to step in and head it clear. But it's one that finds Martial's feet. He does a pretty effective job holding it up, and you get sucked in as an outside back there. What with Walker-Peters, but again, it's another one where it's hard for me to be like, I think we did something particularly wrong. It's just sometimes the ball goes in against you, and I think that my only thing there is with that goal would be you sometimes see. I think Martial does a good job of holding Stevens off, but I think it sometimes it shows a little bit. I think Jack Stevens has been incredible, and I think love what he's doing for just the back four and just being a leader within the club. But he's not physically the strongest,
right.
And Martial's not the strongest guy either, but he's able to hold him off there. And he goes down, and at first there's a question, or is there even a penalty there? So it's one of those things where I think you kind of just have to like recognize, for us, we don't have we don't have Virgil van Dijk. We don't have the best sort of center backs in the world. They do a very good job for us, and unfortunately that means teams that have good players going forward are going to score goals against us sometimes. But the reality is, right now we're in a position where we also are pretty good going forward. So yeah, it kind of just happened, and I didn't make too much of it either way.
Okay, like you said, it is one of those things. It just seems like that in the past, the goal that when the ball is there and can be cleared, we just can't seem to get it clear. But we could have easily already been down given the save from McCarthy. So maybe kind of it evens out as time goes on. And I think the more consistent we get, the more often that the chances will seem to even out for us. Whereas for a long time, it seemed like everything that could go in against us went in against us. And of course, we remember those times more so than when we get lucky and maybe get let off the hook a little bit. So,
yeah, could not agree more. And if we were in 16th or 17th, I would definitely probably be preaching a different tune.
Sure.
But, I think when you sort of are at a position when you're able to perhaps, it doesn't feel so life and death in a way, because it's not. We're not going to be relegated this year.
Yeah.
When goals go in, you kind of say, okay, what happened there? And sometimes there's clear mistakes, but sometimes there's not. And, you just give up a goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to just mention something about our center backs and our fullbacks. Is you start looking around at heat maps and things like that. And Bertrand was forward a lot. And if our center backs, they were mostly operated outside of our own penalty area. For the most part, we were holding a fairly high line against a very pacey front three, which is dangerous. But we did allow 2 goals, but they came in quick succession, and almost like we didn't really have time to reset from the first one. But I thought you could hear Ralph kind of yelling on the TV because there's no crowd to push up and press forward, and we kept doing it, and the guys are getting better at it, which I think is a big thing that I'm pretty excited about.
Both of those guys are really good at playing and cutting out passes, like the balls into strikers. With a high line, they're both really good at that. It does mean sometimes they get beat for pace behind, but they're good at that. And I think, again, it's kind of like you play with what you play within your constraints of what you have. And yeah, sometimes that means you're gonna, if it wasn't for Bertrand getting across on the one where he blocked it, that was a good example of us perhaps playing with a high line and then getting in behind and looking like they were going to score. But, both Bednarik and Stevens are good at cutting out passes and reading the play, looking forward. And I think you just say, okay, that's what they're good at. Let's let them do it.
Yeah, absolutely. United's second goal comes very quickly after this. And this is, I think, one of the first times that Pogba had any time on the ball. And not exactly the same as the Everton goal, but very quick back to front, not a whole lot of time there. And Pogba kind of drives in the midfield and they get the ball out wide. And, a good goal, but I think also that Walker Peters doesn't do enough there. And he's been praised so much, for kind of what he's done in terms of in the team so far since he's come in, because he has been, miles better than Valerie. But today maybe a little more of a reckoning, because you're coming up against a guy who's very, very good in Marcus Rashford, and who's not going to give you anything. And he just seemed to have a kind of a horrible time. And I think he's going to come in for some criticism on that goal. And I think Stevens has to a little bit as well, because there's nobody there, kind of, I guess, getting close enough. I think it's Martial, not Rashford this time. But, do we think there's a little bit more there to criticize on the second goal, maybe, than as a whole team for not pressing and not closing down, and then Kyle Walker-Peters individually for maybe not doing a better job there?
It's a fair point. I think I'm trying to recall back to the replay. They get through the press pretty quickly, and I think that's where I think you can see Ralph's pretty upset at that point. They played through us pretty easily through the midfield, and then you do have you're in that one-on-one position. I've seen us give up that goal before. I think I feel like Sadio Mane actually has scored almost that exact goal earlier this year, where he's running at the back four, cuts in. We're not quick enough with the center back to step to him, and they score. Mm-hmm. It's a tough one, because I think one of the things I thought Man U did a pretty decent job with was they overload, I think, that side a little bit. They have Shaw push up. You have Rashford out there, and then Martial, because he's right-footed, also kind of comes out on that side, which leaves. I thought Walker Peters, was definitely left exposed a few times, but not necessarily by his own doing, just because people were there. So yeah, I think it's a tough one. They play through the press, and it really is almost even numbers going into it. He cuts into his right. At that point, Walker Peters is pretty toast, and
yeah,
you probably want Stevens or Bednarik, can't remember which, to step and try to get something on it. But again, sometimes good players score nice goals. But I agree. I think he probably could have used a little bit more support there, and
sure.
That's the vulnerability of the press, is that if you play kind of, I saw Carl Anka mention this, play either over it or around it, you're a little bit exposed, and I think that's what happened there.
Yeah, there are ways to beat it, and United showed that, and we've seen it, and that's never going to go away. I mean, City and Liverpool, they like to press as well, and sometimes teams get through them. That's just kind of the way the game is played, and so that's okay. If you cut out enough of the individual mistakes and make the pressing as efficient as possible, you'll limit those chances, but sometimes they're still going to be there. So, I can't complain about the way we held them today, because for the most part we were the better team. I think our XG is much better. The chances they had weren't as good, and we had a lot more. We just had a lot more control of the game, I think, even given the legs and how things went eventually. But after that, we went in the drinks break. Even the first drinks break, I think people were looking a little bit tired. And the rest of the first half kind of just went by. There wasn't, other than maybe, tracking back and picking off Pogba again. I think that's kind of the extent of that going into halftime. But I would imagine that there would be some sort of change coming shortly after halftime, given what we saw. But like you said, I don't think we really can complain about the first half. I thought the pressing was good. I thought the chance that was taken by Armstrong was good. And I thought we just started to drop off a little bit. And I think I would have to say it was due to just the number of minutes in their legs at this point, given the layoff and coming back and having it in such kind of short succession.
Yeah, 100%. I think the next, kind of after that second goal, the next 30, 35 minutes, I love having football back, but I think I had the thought almost that, like, I feel like this maybe was kind of what they were worried about, what might happen when sort of matches would come back. It was very disjointed, the quality was a little bit lacking. I mean, even the fact that, we were going with an unchanged team for 3 games. They were going with an unchanged team for their 5th string. So I think it just felt like a tired football match. And I think there wasn't that much there. It felt like there were a lot of fouls. It kind of got a little touchy at one point with Stevens picking up a yellow, then Walker Peters picking up a yellow. It just felt like it kind of was, just some tired legs, having played a lot of football in a short span of matches. And that kind of part of the match just, I think the fact that we didn't concede there was really huge. The only chance that comes to mind that they really had was the one where there's 2, where the one where Martial kind of somehow gets through and puts the shot high and wide, and the one where Bertrand gets across to make that nice block. But, aside from that, there wasn't that much in the match. Yeah. And it just, sometimes I think maybe we'll talk about this later, but like, I have no idea what we're going to do Thursday and Sunday, because we looked pretty gassed. Mm-hmm. It's nice to kind of have those be sort of somewhat less meaningful matches, because, some of those guys have put in a lot of hard minutes. But yeah, those next 30 minutes kind of were just like, all right, well, kind of even, I would say, for the most part. I kind of thought maybe you'd see Man U really push and get a third, and then at that point, the match is probably, for all intents and purposes, done. But
Yeah.
they seemed almost content with 2-1, and it kind of just went from there.
Yeah. Well, I think through that point through the drinks break, I think in the second half, no shots on target during that period from halftime to there. We had the Kyle Walker-Peters handball, which just seemed lazy, but also he was out of position and it was going to be bad. So that happens, but you can just see that kind of creeping in. But and then I think we get into the Kyle Walker-Peters' legs are tired because Rashford just tears him apart over the next kind of 15, 20 minutes. But that is what it is. And then, I think a turning point in the game is Luke Shaw, who has had his struggles at United since he got there in the team, and really was held back for large periods of the game. He wasn't getting forward nearly as much. If you look at the heat maps for the United players and their fullbacks versus our fullbacks, we're pressed much farther forward than they are. He gets injured. He tries to run it off. He can't do it. Williams comes on, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't use all of his subs, but he used all of the opportunities to introduce substitutes. So they're out of that point. And I don't know. It does wind up making a difference in the end because they wind up having to go off, and him and Kyle Walker-Peters have this clash of heads. But I just wanted to say just like one thing. I'm a really big fan of like cushioned headers from center backs. Just when they're kind of running with the striker and they just decide, I'm just going to nod this back to my other center back or my holding midfielder or whatever. It's like the most casual looking defensive action. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you appreciate it, but I wanted to make sure I saw that today, and I wanted to make sure I got that in there. So
there was one, I think, I can't remember if it was Walker-Peters or someone. When you're running with your back to goal at a full sprint and then kind of having to slow yourself up to head the ball like in the opposite direction, it's really hard to do. I agree that those are nice when you see those pulled off well, because it's very easy to miss that header and then there's somebody running behind you. I can't remember, it was either Walker-Peters or one of the center backs had one where you got that guy right on your back and it looks like maybe the ball's going over you, but you kind of just get enough on it and their momentum carries them past it.
Right. It was Walker-Peters today. I think Stevens had one as well. I think Van Dijk had the most ridiculous one earlier this week where he just kind of nodded it back to himself.
I remember that one.
But once again, that's just a guy who's really good at his job doing that. So then going in kind of to the final 9 minutes, it was kind of looking like this was going towards us losing after having played pretty well, but obviously been tired. And I think that could have been the narrative. And I think all the journalists would have been writing that. You feel for Carl a little bit this week because this is actually his team against the team he covers and that he also loves. And then we're going to do this to him at the very end. But I thought we were kind of going forward better in that kind of final 10 minutes. We were actually pushing forward. And then the injury happens where they do the right thing, which I think is one of those things in football where you want to make sure you take care of the players. And it was, I think, good for United not to throw him back out there and say, go defend the lead, because he was obviously hurting. But it does, and people will probably have questions about this. And because it happened to Man United, I think the bigger teams or the bigger networks will talk about it, where maybe there has to be some sort of rule change for people who are hurt. But having that kind of late, drive by Saints, I didn't see it coming because they just looked like they were out on their feet for a good portion of that second half.
Yeah, I agree. I think I hadn't thought about the point you made about sort of with the subs rules, what that means, but I think it's a really good point. Also completely agree that it was actually nice that, someone who is clearly not right didn't get thrown right back in. I think he had some blood on his kit and looked like maybe he broke his nose, maybe he was concussed. Like, great, let's not throw them back out there. I think soccer, football, oftentimes you see guys kind of get cleared out and they go back out there and you're like, that just can't be the case. So I agree with that. I'm glad they did that from a safety of the game perspective. I agree with what you're saying. And also I want to give a quick, I thought Will Smallbone was great. I don't know how many times he touched the ball. I mean, I maybe think he was on the ball maybe 20 times. I'd be surprised if he gave the ball away more than, I don't know if he gave the ball away. And I think I see him play. He comes in for Armstrong. He kind of tucked in a little bit more centrally, but he brings a quality on the ball that's really, really high. And I thought we kept the ball a little bit better when we brought him in. Armstrong was looking pretty leggy, as he can tend to do towards the end of matches. And I thought, we started to control the ball a little bit better, got the Redmond chance. De Gea makes a good save. And, then kind of Williams goes off hurt, and you're like, all right, well, who knows? It just kind of felt at that point it was, I don't want to say 50-50, but it could kind of go either way. And I think, full credit to Ralph for bringing on Obafemi for Oriole. I thought it was pretty telling. I don't know if you were planning on talking about this. I thought it was pretty telling that Pierre did not play.
Yeah.
Because, I think that was a match that very easily, the last 35, 40 minutes, you could probably say, okay, you take off Oriole, you bring on Pierre, who's a little bit more, forward-minded. It stuck out to me that didn't happen. And then they apply some pressure, win a corner, and get a goal.
Yeah. I think the big thing with Smallbone is he comes in originally for Armstrong, so he's playing kind of that, the inside 10 or whatever you want to call it. And I'm not sure he's as good there as he is when he's playing next to Ward-Prowse or in that kind of central midfield role. But
I agree.
When they bring Obafemi in, you see him kind of shift back, and you go, okay, but really, we're going for it at that point because we have 3 strikers on the pitch, plus Redmond, who has played as a second striker before. And we are, you can see Ralph's purpose. He's not here to lose. He's not here just to see it out. And I think that's so nice to see, because once again, we're not just along for the ride. We are here to punish teams. We are here to kind of make ourselves known. And I think, if we need any more kind of signaling from him and from the rest of the team that this is what we're doing, and the guys on the bench, this is how we're going to approach the game. And I think I had this baseball coach, we just call him Coach Hartass, but he instilled this kind of in us all of the seasons he was around us, is your approach to the game has to be this way every single day. And we don't take innings off. We don't take minutes off. We don't just say, hey, this is the end of the game, and this is United, so they're supposed to get the points here. That's not why we're here. And I think all of that kind of comes into Michael Obafemi being at the back post when we have that late corner. And I think Lindelof making a mistake playing him onside, but it doesn't matter because Obafemi, I think 2 touches, 1 goal, and you call it good, and you take your point and go home and say, sorry, United, you don't get to be in the top 4 just because you're Manchester United. By the way, that's the second draw with us this year. We also beat Manchester City, so you can have all of that, and here we are.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's funny. You look at who we've played and who we've beaten over the course of the year. We've beaten Tottenham, Chelsea, City. We've drawn United twice. Liverpool, obviously, we didn't get anything from those. In Arsenal, we got a draw in the first one. Did we, or did we lose that game? I can't remember when they got the late goal. I think we drew that match. But we've taken points from, just about everybody. And, if you're able to kind of bloody people's noses like that, and I think that this was a match where we definitely did that. We were very physical. And I think bordering, there were a couple times where I was a little worried, Ward-Prowse on a yellow. And there were a couple moments where I thought maybe we would pick up another red, but we're a team that's becoming hard to play against. I think what you're talking about is we're proactive in our approach. We know how we're going to play, and that's how we play, and it just makes a huge difference. And when you kind of go about doing things the right way, which I think is what you're getting at, good things happen, and it's nice to sort of be experiencing that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, I think I'm happy not that we got a point. I'm happy with the way we approach the game and the way that I think I'm hopeful, and I could be completely wrong and thinking that the shift is happening. It's definitely, I think it's taking hold, and the team is changing, not necessarily in the makeup. And I'm sure as players come in that fit Ralph's system a little bit better, and we can get rid of some of the players who obviously aren't going to fit in and aren't in Ralph's plans. And we get guys like Boufal and Gineppo that are healthy and can come in and contribute late in the game. I think we'll be good. I think we'll be better. And I think I want to get to the point where teams don't want to play us. They don't look at Southampton on the fixture list and go that's 3 points. And I think right now, I don't think anybody wants to play us. And as long as we keep approaching things like this, I think it'll be good. I think the one thing that we might be worried about is Ralph may just run these guys into the ground this season when it, it's kind of like, you kind of want to look at him and go like, hey man, like it's over, but like, that's just not how he is.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. Again, it kind of goes back to like, what we played two more matches this week. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like, who's going to play? Because, I mean, I can't imagine James Ward-Prowse can play every minute of the season. So maybe you have Højbjerg come in, maybe you have Smallbone come in. But, I mean, there just looks like a lot of tired players. We don't have anybody else really at the 10s. As you mentioned, there's no Buffal, there's no Gineppo. There's just a lot of guys who played a lot of minutes. So, yeah. I think it's also one of my biggest complaint with Ralph, and I love him. He's fantastic. Is sometimes I feel like he's a little late to make subs. That's literally the one thing I've complained about him in the past, is that I feel like he sometimes is just, he lets them run themselves into the ground a little bit instead of making subs a little bit more proactively. And I guess we'll kind of see what happens over the remaining 3 matches, when there's really, there's not that much to play for. I don't think we're going to catch. I think the only team realistically that will likely catch is Everton, who I think we're tied on points with. Then I think there's a 5-point gap. So, that's going to be tough to make up with only 3 matches left. So I'm really curious to see what happens in these last 3 matches.
Yeah, we're level on points with Everton, just a couple of goals behind them. Because if you didn't know, we lost a match 9-0 this year, and that has definitely hurt our goal difference. But anyway, so not a lot of time for listener questions this week, simply because we didn't have a lot of time to get them in, because we kind of started right after the final whistle. But we do have one question to address, and this comes from Chris Thomas on Facebook, who is one of the patrons, and asked this several weeks ago, and I said, sorry, I missed it. I'll get it on the next one. And then I forgot again. And so here we are. And so he's going back to some of the goals that we've conceded, that they've kind of come through individual mistakes, and they're not, it's not always the same player. But I guess I'm going to ask you as somebody who's played more than just in the park, which is where I get nutmegged repeatedly. Is there a way that a coach can account for those types of errors and those mistakes, and can you coach that out of a player, or are there things you can do within a system to kind of cover for that, or how would you approach that? I guess because we talked about it a little bit in terms of sometimes people just score really good goals and you just give them credit, but sometimes we do make mistakes and we allow those things to happen. So I guess, how do you approach that in a team where sometimes those individual mistakes are there and we're maybe just not quite good enough to overcome them once they happen? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think one of the things I would just say right off the bat is I think we are miles ahead of where we were with that. I think back to some of the, in the bleaker times, a lot of the mistakes of just not kicking the ball out of bounds. The one that comes immediately to mind, or there's 2, is the one that Højt makes that mistake and they score. And then the one against Everton 2 years ago when we almost get relegated, where Bertrand just tries to play the ball up the line instead of just kicking it out. I think there's just for some of it, you just have to kind of do the little things right. And that's coaching. And I think that's actually something Ralph has done a really good job of. So some of it, I think, is you can mitigate through coaching. For example, the Ward-Prowse one today, I think that's a mistake he only makes because I think he's tired and fatigued. That was my sort of immediate reaction, is that's the only way. He's so skilled and good on the ball that I just wouldn't expect that from him. So, I think fatigue can play a role. With someone I think about the mistake that Valerie made that led to St. Maxim scoring for Newcastle. Some of those are just you're going to get that with young players, and that's kind of the cross you bear when you play young players. And I think Ben Narek is another guy who's, he's still young. He's probably 23 or 24, if that maybe, and playing center back, you're going to make mistakes. So I think some of it is just you have to coach that out of them to be safe. And I think you actually see Ben Narek plays very safely a lot of the time when he has the ball. He'll clear it out even when there's another play on. Some of it, I think, is concentration. That's just something you develop as you get older as a pro. Some of it just happens because it's a long season and that's the way it works out. And then I think some of it, does come from kind of that coaching and the expectations of the player. And I think actually Ralph has done a pretty good job of that. There's, the McCarthy one, against Arsenal was pretty bad, but he's trying to play out of the back. That's something we're trying to do. It looks like a little bit more. So those mistakes will sometimes happen. Yeah, I think it comes a lot of the time down to concentration and that's something I think you develop more of as a player as you get older. And just as a side on that is I think, you touched on Kyle Walker-Peters coming back down to earth a little bit in this game. I agree, but I actually thought he was pretty good after the goals. I think he kind of kept going, and that's not something I feel like we would have seen from Cedric or Jan Valery after, 2 goals coming from their side. Those kind of players sometimes, kind of hide when that happens. He doesn't seem like he would do that. And I think also same with Ward-Prowse. He made that mistake, but he was still kind of everywhere today. So,
yeah,
some of it is personality of the players as well. It's one of those things that the mistakes are always going to be there. It's just how can you limit them and mitigate them to an extent.
Yeah. And we should be very clear that Kyle Walker-Peters was up against 2 players today that have a combined 32 goals in the Premier League this season. He's not up against and it's not a team where there's only one attacker and everything's going to go through them or any of this. I mean, Martial and Rashford are very good players, and Rashford especially has been one of those guys is really fun to watch, and he was again tonight fun to watch. Unfortunately, it was against us.
Yeah, and they play well together. Yeah. I think that's another thing. They both kind of will drift out to that side, and then they have a good understanding of what the other's trying to do. So it's 2 against 1 a lot of the time.
Yeah. So, and I want to make sure that we give credit where it's due. We don't. I hate to. I think sometimes it's hard not to fall into the trap of somebody's had a good couple of games, so you don't want to criticize them or whatever. But I think you gotta criticize when it's there, but also recognize that he didn't hang his head. And that's a really good point, that he continued to play. He continued to get forward because he has that job in our system as well.
Yeah.
And he was up there doing it. So you gotta give him some credit, that way. So, I don't know, Alex, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but is there anything else you'd like to add? Some of the patrons were discussing, it sounds like we're kind of expecting a little bit of rotation, but Ralph doesn't tend to do that. But it almost seems necessary at this point going into Thursday.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned earlier, I want to see some of these guys play just because I don't know them, and I find that part of the game just fun and exciting. But I really have no clue what to expect. I mean, there's a lot of positions where we have kind of the one guy who plays there, and a lot of those guys have played a lot of minutes. And, I would hate for I'd hate for us to have a Danny injury at this point, frankly.
Yeah.
Or James Ward-Prowse injury at this point. So if that means Smallbone plays more minutes and maybe we don't get results in the last 3 games, that might be sacrilegious for me to say, but I would like to see what some of these kids can do. I think also because it doesn't look like we're going to have any money or much money for the foreseeable future with, kind of what our wage bill is and who we have signed as of late. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see us rotate, but again, I just don't really know what that looks like, especially because, you hear Buffal and Gineppo might be done for the year. Jan Valery might be done for the year. So then maybe do you see Dan Sillett right back? I just don't really know what the rotation will look like, but I hope to see it.
Yeah. And it'll be nice to see some of those other players. Hopefully that, some guys may be making their final appearance for the team. Some guys may be making, one of many, and we'll just have to kind of see how it goes. But I just want to say thanks again for coming on the show and agreeing to do this. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. I hope that you are staying safe. I think during the game, I missed the actual news going on, and our governor, essentially set us back a couple of levels in terms of shutting things down again. So I hope you stay safe. I hope your family's safe, because it's the coronavirus is still a thing that we have to deal with. And, hopefully at some point we'll be able to see each other in person and have a beverage of whatever sort, depending on what time of the day it is, we'll make the appropriate choice, I think. Yeah,
likewise. I completely agree and appreciate you having me on. And yeah, same to you. Stay safe and best to you and your family through all of this.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
That does it for this week's episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Alex Hart. You can find him on Twitter at Hart Garfunkel. If you are in or around the LA area, want to find somebody to watch a Saints match with once this social distancing COVID-19 thing is passed, hit him up. He's down there. He's ready. Like I said, I'm only 3.5 hours away. We're right there. We're basically neighbors. So thanks to Alex. I appreciate your insight, appreciate your time, I appreciate your support, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. If you'd like to follow this show on Twitter or Instagram, you can do that. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. There's no underscore in the Facebook address. If you want to email the show, that's southamptondelivery@gmail.com. You can get all that by just going to southamptondelivery.com, which is the show website. You'll find all of those links, plus a way to sign up for the newsletter. And you'll find links to share for all of the various platforms where the show is available. So if you have a friend who might like the show, you can send them to the website, and then they can choose however they want to listen. The show would be very difficult, almost impossible to do without the partners of the show. You can follow the Southampton page on Twitter at Southampton page, or on Instagram at Southampton page 1. The logo was designed by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. If you look at his Instagram page, it's very good. And if you look at my Instagram page, it's not as good. That's because he's good at his job, and I'm not so good at my hobby, but that's okay. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. We'll be back with an episode for patrons after the Brighton game. We'll be back next Tuesday with an episode in this feed for everybody else. If you're interested in getting all the bonus stuff, you can head on over to patreon.com/SFC Delivery, where you can sign up to become a patron and supporter of the show. But really, I just appreciate you listening, and hope to have you back next week. Until then, from it together, march on.